Sam Altman just admitted something that should terrify every AI founder out there. He said that AI's ultimate limitation isn't going to be the models, it's not going to be the algorithms, it's not even going to be the data. It's going to be the electrical grid. Let that sink in for a second. The most powerful AI companies in the world are bottlenecked by transformers, power lines, and physical infrastructure that was literally built in the 1960s. And while everyone is racing to build the next AI unicorn, they're completely missing the trillion-dollar opportunity that's hiding in plain sight. Here's what nobody is saying out loud. The biggest opportunity for successful startups in 2026 is going to be building something that's not AI. Now, I'm not talking about companies that use AI as a tool. I'm talking about the winners that don't depend on it at all to succeed. Because right now, there's this invisible gold rush happening that almost no one is paying attention to. AI is creating these massive downstream problems that only physical solutions can actually fix. We're talking about overloaded power grids, climate infrastructure that's failing in real time, and supply chains that just can't keep up with the demand. And here's the kicker. Everyone is building AI companies right now, which means the funding is saturated, the talent pool is getting diluted, and competitive moats are disappearing literally overnight. But the founders who are building pick and shovel business models, the ones who are solving real physical problems in the real world, they're operating in blue ocean markets with guaranteed demand, huge moats, and almost zero competition. So today, I'm going to show you exactly where those opportunities are and why they're going to outperform 90% of AI startups over the next decade. Let's start with some numbers that should make every founder pay attention. The U.S. Department of Energy just released a report that says if current trends continue, most regions of the United States will face unacceptable reliability risks regarding their power grids within 5 years. Less than 5 years. That's not some distant future problem, that's 2030. Bank of America recently published analysis showing that 31% of transmission lines and 46% of distribution infrastructure are behind their useful life. We're not talking about getting old, we're talking about infrastructure that has already exceeded its design lifetime and is operating on borrowed time. And here's where it gets really interesting. The North American Electric Reliability Corporation warned that more than half of North America is now at risk of blackouts due to what they are calling explosive demand growth. Their 10-year summer peak demand forecast has grown by more than 50% in just the last year. 50% in 1 year. Advanced manufacturing is growing in America. Construction spending on factory infrastructure hit $234 billion in 2024, a 21% jump over the prior year and double the average of previous years. But here's the problem. You can't prompt your way to a new transformer. You can't train a model to install a microgrid. You can't use GPT to upgrade a substation. This is physical infrastructure. It takes time, money, materials, and skilled labor. And right now, we are woefully unprepared. The United States imports roughly 80% of its large transformers. A single large power transformer can weigh up to 400 tons, requires custom engineering, and takes 18 to 24 months to manufacture. And in some cases, utilities are reporting lead times of 2 to 4 years. Meanwhile, the workforce that builds and maintains this infrastructure has a median age over 50. About half are expected to retire in the next 5 to 10 years. Job growth in transmission and distribution could require as many as 105,000 new skilled workers by 2030. But trade schools and apprenticeship programs are producing barely a quarter of that number annually. This is not a software problem. AI will not fix this. This is a massive physical bottleneck, and it represents one of the biggest startup opportunities of the decade. I hope you're enjoying the content, and if you are, please consider subscribing to the channel. Back to the episode. So why is climate and energy infrastructure the opportunity moving forward? Let's talk about the market opportunity here because the numbers are absolutely staggering. Bloomberg estimates global investment in the low-carbon energy transition was about $2.1 trillion in 2024 and needs to average about $5.6 trillion per year from 2025 to 2030 to align with a net zero by 2050 goal. It's a massive funding gap, and it's creating unprecedented opportunities for the right companies. Now, let me break down where the capital is actually flowing right now. The U.S. electric power sector faces record capital needs of more than $1.4 trillion through 2030. And in just the first 9 months of 2025, M&A activity in the U.S. electric power sector exceeded $109 billion. At the state level, we're seeing massive commitments. Washington's Cap and Invest program raised $1.8 billion in its first year. New York estimates their Cap and Invest program could generate between $6 and $12 billion annually by 2030. California residents just passed a $10 billion bond proposal focused on water infrastructure and climate resilience. And the federal government? FEMA made $1.3 billion available for climate resilience grants through BRIC and flood mitigation assistance programs. The Grid Deployment Office awarded $14.5 billion in grants through 2023 and 2024, matched by $36.9 billion in private investment. This is real money being deployed right now, not promises, not aspirational goals, billions of actual capital being allocated. Now let's talk about the venture capital side, because there's something really interesting happening. While national climate tech VC funding dropped from its peak in 2021, certain regions are seeing explosive growth. In the Pacific Northwest, climate and sustainability tech companies netted nearly 40% of all investment dollars in 2025. The three biggest investment rounds in the region this year all went to clean energy companies. TerraPower raised $650 million for next-gen nuclear. Group 14 Technologies raised $430 million for battery materials, and Helion Energy pulled in significant capital for fusion energy. Pacific Northwest companies raised more than $2 billion in 2025, which is nearly 3 times the amount they netted last year. And this is happening despite the constantly shifting sands at the federal level. Why? Because the demand is undeniable. Tech giants like Amazon, Microsoft, and others are scrambling to secure clean electricity to power their AI operations. The urgency is real. Founders who can deliver solutions are getting funded. So let's get concrete. What should you actually build if you want to capitalize on this opportunity? I'm going to break this down into 3 major categories: grid infrastructure, climate adaptation, and distributed energy systems. First, grid infrastructure. This is the backbone stuff that's literally falling apart and desperately needs to be upgraded or replaced. Think transformer refurbishing and upgrade services. Remember those 18 to 24-month lead times I mentioned? There's a massive opportunity to refurbish and upgrade existing transformers rather than waiting years for new ones. Some companies are already doing this, and they're printing money. Then there are the microgrid deployment firms. As the main grid becomes less reliable, institutions, campuses, industrial facilities, and even municipalities want backup systems. These aren't just emergency generators. These are sophisticated systems that can operate independently when the main grid fails. And then there are the distributed energy storage integrators. Solar and wind are great, but the real challenge is storage. Companies that integrate battery systems, manage load balancing, and provide grid services are in high demand. How about modular grid expansion systems? The traditional grid infrastructure takes years to build. Companies developing modular, fast install solutions that can be deployed in months instead of years have a massive advantage. Then there are the opportunities for substation upgrade and retrofit services. Most substations were built 40 to 60 years ago and need significant upgrades to handle modern loads. This is unglamorous work, but it's essential and massively underserved. The second category, climate adaptation and resilience. This is about protecting physical infrastructure from the climate impacts that are already happening. Heat-reflective roofing and building materials can reduce the abundance of urban heat islands. Cities are literally cooking. Materials that can reduce building temperatures by 10 to 15 degrees aren't just nice to have, they're becoming mandatory in several municipalities. Flood control and stormwater management systems can mitigate the effect of extreme weather events, and municipalities are desperate for solutions. Seems like New York City is flooding every other month now. This includes everything from permeable pavement to sophisticated drainage systems to flood barriers. Droughts are becoming more frequent and severe, so water reuse and recycling systems are in demand. Local water recycling isn't just for California anymore. Industrial facilities, commercial buildings, and even residential developments are looking for ways to reduce water consumption. And don't forget those AI data centers. They can consume as much as 5 million gallons per day in some cases, especially where evaporative cooling is used and AI loads are high. After watching entire communities burn down, insurance companies are now requiring renovations with fire-resistant materials. There's enormous demand for both new construction materials and retrofit solutions. Extreme weather infrastructure retrofits can harden existing infrastructure against hurricanes, tornadoes, extreme heat, and other climate impacts. It's a massive market that barely existed 5 years ago. Here's the third category of successful non-AI startups in 2026. distributed energy and electrification. This is where the energy transition from fossil fuels meets practical implementation. Electrification retrofit services can convert buildings from gas to electric, and that work isn't trivial. It requires electrical upgrades, new equipment, and often significant construction. Companies that can streamline this process are in high demand. Backup power and resilience systems are now must-haves, with the grid becoming less reliable. Everyone from hospitals to data center to manufacturing facilities want backup systems. This goes beyond traditional diesel generators to include battery systems, fuel cells, and hybrid solutions. EV charging infrastructure deployment companies continue to grow at triple-digit pace. With nearly 300,000 EVs sold in just the first quarter of 2025, the demand for charging infrastructure is exploding. And I'm not just talking about residential chargers, I'm talking about commercial and fleet solutions too. Just look at all those electric USPS and Amazon vehicles showing up at your house or business's front door. Controlled environment agricultural systems can stabilize food production. As weather becomes more unpredictable, growing food in controlled environments becomes more viable. This includes everything from vertical farms to sophisticated greenhouse systems. As electricity costs rise and reliability decreases, businesses need better tools to monitor usage, predict cost, and optimize consumption. Energy monitoring and optimization platforms may not be a replacement for more power plants, but they also don't cost billions to implement, and it's a massive market. You're not fighting the AI wave, you're providing the infrastructure that makes it possible. Let me tell you why these non-AI infrastructure companies are going to absolutely dominate over the next decade. First, they have structural defensibility that AI companies simply don't have. You can't fork a microgrid installation company on GitHub. You can't replicate a transformer refurbishing company with a new model release. These businesses require physical assets, skilled labor, regulatory licenses, established supply chains, and customer relationships built over years. While AI companies are competing on model performance and racing against open source alternatives that drop every other week, infrastructure companies are building moats that get wider over time. Second, the demand is guaranteed and growing. This isn't speculative demand based on whether enterprises will adopt AI tools. This is infrastructure that must exist for modern society to function. The lights need to stay on, buildings need to stay cool, water needs to be managed. These are non-negotiable requirements. Third, the competitive landscape is wide open. In the AI space, you're competing with thousands of startups, all the major tech companies, and open source projects. In grid infrastructure and climate adaptation, you're competing with slow-moving incumbents who haven't innovated in decades and a handful of other startups. Fourth, the regulatory environment is supportive. While AI faces increasing regulatory uncertainty, climate and infrastructure solutions have strong policy tailwinds. Federal and state governments are actively trying to fund these projects. They're offering grants, tax credits, and favorable financing terms. They want you to succeed. Fifth, the business models are clear and proven. You're not trying to invent a new monetization strategy. You're selling to customers who have budgets, who understand the value, and who are already looking for solutions. Many of these businesses can be profitable from day one. Sixth, the exit opportunities are massive. Utilities, energy companies, and industrial conglomerates are actively looking to acquire these capabilities. Private equity firms are raising climate infrastructure funds specifically to buy these businesses. The M&A market is hot and getting hotter. And finally, you're solving real problems. I know that sounds obvious, but think about it. You're not trying to convince someone they need another productivity tool. You're providing solutions to urgent, physical problems that people are actively trying to solve right now. Here's the strategic framework I want you to think about. Market gaps are ideal wedges for startups. You want to serve the underserved where demand is high, but supply is basically non-existent. Right now, if you look at the AI space, you've got oversaturated funding markets. Climate tech VC funding hit $76 billion in 2021, but then dropped to $38 billion in 2024. For AI, every VC is writing checks. For infrastructure, funding is more selective, but the opportunities are bigger. You've got intense talent competition in AI. Every engineer wants to work on large language models. But in infrastructure and climate adaptation, there's a massive talent opportunity. If you can recruit and train people, you have a huge advantage. In AI, you're facing rapid commoditization. Open source models are getting better every month. In infrastructure, you're building physical businesses that are difficult to commoditize. Your advantage compounds over time rather than eroding. In AI, paths to profitability are unclear. Inference costs are high, pricing is under pressure, and margin structure is uncertain. In infrastructure, you can often charge cost plus or value-based pricing with healthy margins from day one. For AI, regulatory uncertainty is high. Nobody really knows what the rules will be in 2 years. In infrastructure, you have regulatory support and tailwinds, and that regulatory environment moves slowly, providing more certainty and encouraging investment and innovation. Governments want these solutions built. This is basic market dynamics. When everyone is building the same thing, opportunities get crowded and returns get compressed. But when everyone is looking in only one direction, massive opportunities open up in all those ignored spaces. And here's the timing element. We're at a unique moment where all the forces are aligned. The infrastructure is failing, the demand is spiking, the capital is available, the policy support is in place, and the competition is minimal because everyone else is focused on AI. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. The last time we had an infrastructure build-out of this scale was probably in the 50s and 60s with the interstate highway system. That created enormous wealth for the companies that built it. We're about to do it again. And you can either watch it happen or you can be one of the companies that makes it happen. So let's bring this all together. Yes, AI is going to dominate the headlines for the next few years. The media is going to cover every new model release, every funding round, every capacity benchmark. But the most successful startups that aren't AI companies are going to dominate real revenue, real profits, and real impact. They're going to solve problems that AI literally cannot touch: heat, water, energy, infrastructure. These are physical constraints in the real world that require physical solutions. These founders aren't going to be chasing hype cycles. They're not going to be pivoting every 6 months based on what's trending on Twitter. They're going to be solving the real emergencies of the next decade. And here's what I want you to take away from this. If you're a founder, or if you're thinking about starting something, don't just follow the crowd into AI because that's where the momentum is right now. Ask yourself these questions. Where are the structural gaps that AI is creating or exposing? Where is demand guaranteed but supply basically non-existent? Where can you build something with real defensibility that can't be disrupted by the next mega VC-backed LLM? Look at the grid infrastructure crisis. Look at the $1.4 trillion that needs to be invested by 2030. Look at the 46% of distribution infrastructure that's beyond its useful life. Look at the massive workforce shortage in skilled trades. These are not problems that will be solved by better algorithms. These are problems that will be solved by companies that can build things, install things, operate things in the physical world. And those companies are going to be worth billions. The electrical grid is failing. Climate infrastructure is crumbling. The demand for energy is exploding. And almost nobody is building solutions because it's not sexy. It's not trendy. It doesn't fit the narrative that all innovation is happening in AI. That's your blue ocean. The biggest opportunities of 2026 aren't digital. They're physical. They're in the unglamorous work of building, installing, and maintaining the infrastructure that makes everything else possible. And the founders who see that early, who are willing to do the hard work of building real companies that solve real problems, those are the founders who are going to win big over the next decade. That's it for this episode. As always, like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.